I can make a safe space for her to learn who she is. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Maxine. I have Avoidant Personality Disorder and ADHD. And today I want to talk about our inner children, our inner adolescents, and how I think that revisiting those parts of ourselves and really honoring and nurturing those parts of ourselves can help us to get better as adults. So of course, anybody with a personality disorder had some degree of neglect or abuse or trauma in some form or another at some point in our adolescence. And, as far as like really early childhood, I know for a lot of people this really stems from the parents or the caregivers in very early childhood. And some people have amazing, perfect, supportive, loving, present parents, and some people have awful, narcissistic, abusive, neglectful, or totally absent parents. And so it can be really very clear one way or the other. But I think many of us had parents that fall somewhere in the middle, where they were there and they were trying their best in the ways that they were capable or ways that they knew how to be there, but were far from perfect and had their own issues and trouble self-regulating and whatever it is. So that can be a little bit of a gray area. Of course, it could also be beyond the very early childhood, and like for me, a lot of the events that I think caused me to have this personality disorder probably took place in between middle school and high school, and were the effects of people outside of my home. So, there's a lot of possibilities in terms of like how these types of disorders can form over time. And also, in the case of some trauma, we might not even remember all of the things that happened to us. And, when you're a child, things that an adult might not think of as being traumatic can be very, very stressful on a child. So all this to say that it's likely, even if you can't remember or pinpoint what made you this way, that there was some event or long-standing pattern of lack of support and lack of encouragement in adolescence. And if you're able to think back to that, like I am able to pinpoint like a few periods of my life where I really felt like I missed out on just being that age because I was either so stressed out about trying to fit in and dealing with like bullying and just not feeling able to be myself in that environment, and really having to mask and figure out who I needed to be okay. And later in my teen years, in that relationship that I've talked about at length now, I really completely abandoned who I had been up until that point. And my primary focus was figuring out who I needed to become, what I needed to like, what I needed to look like, the interests that I needed, the mannerisms, all of these things to be loved by this person that I was hoping to be loved by. And so I think it's really important. I've kind of come to this realization recently, like many realizations I've come to recently, where I think it's really important for those of us who have grown into adults that feel completely lost. It's important for us to go back to those times that we missed out on when we were younger and get in touch with that part of ourselves. It's funny, at 30 years old, I feel internally like I'm still 19 or 20 sometimes. Like I feel like I really, I always say I feel stunted, but it's almost like my life, the active part of my life kind of stopped at that point. And I started living for other people and letting other people make decisions for me and anticipating what other people would say or think or do in response to what I was doing. And that's when I sort of quit living for myself. And so I'm at this point in my journey where I'm really thinking about my 16-year-old self. I'm thinking about my 11-year-old self and really thinking about what she would be doing right now, what she would be interested in, what beliefs she would hold without the influence of others. If I had just been in an environment back then where I felt really supported in exploring who I was and expressing who I was, which I did not feel at the time. And there's this concept of reparenting that I find really interesting because, again, I love my parents. I don't think they did an awful job, but if I were to raise children, or if I were to have the authority to tell my parents to raise me differently, like, of course, there were things that I would have done different. And this is kind of another one of those ways where, like I've mentioned before, like our inner monologue is not ourself, and we can separate us from that voice. In a way, it's easier for us to have sympathy for ourselves and our own experiences if we sort of don't think of us as we are now, but think about us as children. Like look at a baby picture of yourself, or a picture of yourself from the time that you were treated badly. And sometimes it's hard for us to have compassion for ourselves in the moment that we're in now. But when you look at a picture, like when I look at a picture of my 16-year-old self, I was a baby, and I can't believe that anybody, especially a grown man, would have treated me that way at that time. And like when I look at a picture of myself from middle school and I think about how mean those kids were, of course they were kids too, but I just have so much more sympathy for that little girl that feels so separate from who I am now. But she's not. She's still me. And I think it's really valuable to be able to reconnect with those parts of yourself, especially if you're trying to build confidence, come into your own. I just think that's a really important part of healing, at least for me, in where I'm at now. And in this process of reparenting, you can sort of talk to yourself now in the context of you when you were young. And you can make those changes. You can treat yourself now the way you wish you would have been treated when you were younger. So for me, that's things like accommodating what I now know is my ADHD, and doing the best I can to support the brain that I have versus trying to conform to like this normal idea of what is successful. When I was younger, I was taught as a little girl to be polite over everything else. And there have been times as an adult that I have responded to like literal sexual harassment with kindness and being overly polite. And while I think it's good to be polite, I would not teach my daughter that. And I don't think that that's healthy for me. So that's something that I'm trying to work on, is not having to be polite to somebody who doesn't deserve it, and being able to stand up for myself in a way that I never felt comfortable doing. And this can also look like, not enabling yourself, which is a problem that I had. It was sort of like once I discovered Avoidant Personality Disorder and ADHD, and I learned why I felt the way that I did, I sort of over-accommodated myself and inadvertently made the situation worse. And I'm planning on making a separate video eventually, like deep diving into that. But it's like, oh, I understand why I feel this way. Maybe I don't have to feel this way. I can just not force myself to do all of these things that I've been forced to do my whole life. And I can say no to doing social things that I don't want to do. And, by doing that, I actually sort of made myself worse. But reparenting can be meeting yourself with kindness and allowing accommodations that are helpful, but also as if you were your own child. Like, you want what's best for them. You want them to meet their potential. You want that little girl or little boy in those pictures to succeed. You want them to grow, and you want them to be healthy. And so it's meeting yourself with compassion, but also encouragement, and not enabling them by just kind of letting yourself do whatever you feel like doing, which is what I have been doing for a long time. Is I didn't feel like doing anything, so I didn't do anything. And while that feels safer, it feels safer and more comfortable, that's not necessarily what's best. So I've just been thinking a lot about my younger self and who would I be? Who would I be if there were no other influences at that point in my life, if I had been supported and trying to be the support for that younger version of myself that I didn't feel like I had at the time. So I just wanted to talk about that because I think that could be helpful. I think it's always nice to be able to just the perspective that we have, and like, at least for me, the thought process, it's like, of course, you know, people say like you should be nice to yourself, but those words don't mean anything to me unless I'm able to like shift my mindset somehow. And so maybe this is a way that can be helpful for you, like it is for me. Switching my mindset to being nicer and wanting to connect and get to know this younger version of myself has helped me to be able to do that a little more easily, and to help me feel like I can make a safe space for her to learn who she is, even if it's 15 years, 20 years later, you know? So that's what I have for this topic. You guys, I posted a poll like a week or so ago, asking if you guys would be interested in like vlog style videos. And the answer was overwhelmingly yes. So I'm starting to like try to learn how to do that. But so far it's just feeling very unnatural and kind of boring. So, I don't know when I'll get around to actually posting something like that, but I'm playing around with it. And the other big news is that I made a Discord server for us. So if you guys have never used Discord before, it's like a mix between a subreddit and like a chat room, kind of. So you can click on the link in the description of any of my videos, or it's on my like about page, I think, my channel page. And you can join us over there. There's only like, I don't know, I think as I'm filming this, there's like 15 of us in there now. So it's really small, but I'd love to see it grow a little bit and get us all in there supporting one another and talking about stuff. It's just kind of easier than doing it here in the comments. So whatever works for you though, but I'd love to see you over there. Yeah, and until next time, thanks for watching. I love you guys. Goodbye.